Hey guys, welcome to the Media Collaborative. You know that our motto is we pour into those that pour into each other. So it has grown out of a servant leadership to make sure that we were connected during the pandemic. And in this process, we have connected so many dots and also allowed each other to pivot and rise above. Our goal is to continue the network, continue the collaboration. And I welcome you to the Media Collaborative. If you haven't joined our Facebook page, our LinkedIn page, Tony's going to drop those in the chat and you'll be able to get those as well. I just want to congratulate you guys for taking us into our second year. I remember when we first got started, April and I did a webinar with Neil Foote, and it was about what do we do from here? Because we're PR people. That means we are born extroverts, and so we couldn't go anywhere because we were shelter in place. So we have a few congratulations in place. I want to congratulate Tony on yet another job. Congratulations, Tony. We love Tony because he took him, 2 years to get the first job, and then he got his second job. All right. I'm going to need a C note later, Tony. Just a C note.
Yeah, thank you.
One of our guests today, Maria Roberts, is a result-driven creative content strategist. I love the way we can do those words. As an accomplished professional, her skills is in writing, editing, marketing, social media, and brand development. And her background has been in public relations and media consulting. She and I have worked on some projects together. One of the most notable was with 135th Street Agency, where we helped launch Queen Sugar. And it was one of the greatest, best launches in the history of that network, network. And also, Maria was so powerful that Oprah turned her room over to her and made her the guest tweeter for the handle and played a role in enabling the chat. So we're to celebrate Maria for that. Our other speaker is my ride or die 4 a.m. phone call, April Turner. She's the Vice President of Communication and External Affairs for Higher Heights for America. It is the political home for Black women. And there she works to harness the collective organizing power of Black women into the voting booth and into the elected office. April is a seasoned public relations professional with 20 years of experience working with nonprofit corporate clients. As prior to her current role, she was Vice President of Communications for the Campaign for Youth Justice, and she is the owner of Turner Communications. And she's able to practice what she says, public relations with a purpose. And worthy causes always work when you're working with public relations. That puts her into the meeting rooms with the NAACP, the Hip Hop Caucus, She the People, W.C. Kellogg Foundation. I could go down the list, but one important thing about April, and there's so many, is she got skin in the game and she's been on the Hill. April has attained her accreditation in public relations, A.P.R, and we want some tips on that. Another other guest is Earl Arms from Milwaukee. They're probably having snowstorms there already, right, Earl? Media and PR strategist for Northwestern Mutual, but he's also the host of Black Nouveau, Milwaukee PBS. I love the show, and is the president of the Wisconsin Black Media Association, which is a local NABJ chapter. Before his current role, he's been a communication director, and he's been a spokesperson for Lieutenant Governor Mandela Burns, and it's been a decade in sports anchor reporting and photography of news affiliates all across the country. So I can't wait to find everybody's superpower. And our other speaker closing out the show today is Arlynda Almond. Now, we like Arlynda because I call her the show me the money woman. Dr. Almond is a human capital manager, HR strategist, and she is currently with, let me get this right, the Department of Veteran Affairs, where they do strategic planning, strategic development, and continued initiatives around program integration. So I put all these people together because today we want to know what we're worth and how we get it done. One of the most elusive things out there right now is the P.M.P. Now, y'all know I thought P.M.P meant something whole different because, I work for UGK. And so with Pimp C and Bun B and their latest hit, Pocket Full of Stones, when I heard P.M.P, I just knew that was a song. But Maria, I'll let you shine light on it. It's your time. Tell us about the P.M.P and the value that brings to us. I made you the co-host in case you have something to share.
Okay, it would help if I unmute. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. I'm glad to be here. It's good to see
folks again, both familiar and new faces. So welcome. Like Terry said, I am a P.M.P. It does not mean what the song, all the different songs says. It makes you think about, I mean, when you really think about it, I mean, it shows how culture can influence the mind. And it's like, that's the first thing you think of. Because when I heard it for the first time, I was like, is that what it meant? But obviously it's not. In addition to the things that Terry mentioned about me, I also work as a government contractor as a certified project management professional. That's what P.M.P stands for. I am also a certified Scrum Master, and I also have 3 additional certs in certified agile leadership, the essentials for teams and for organizations. And so what I'm going to go over with you today is it's just a small presentation on what the P.M.P is and why I think that now is the perfect time for members here and those that you know in your networks to get ready and prepare to go for this highly valued certification. And so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So for me, I just got my P.M.P last year. I had studied for it, and I'll concede this. I actually failed the first time. In the past, the P.M.P was usually a certification that many people ascribed to people in construction or people who were doing software development. And over the years, as projects evolved, as the government needed more services, as private industry needed additional services from organizations who offer different types of assistance, I think PMI, who is a Project Management Institute, who issues the certification, I think they realized that, okay, we may need to look, kind of examine and redo the test. So I will go ahead and go to the next slide. What is the P.M.P? And so the project management professional is the P.M.P. It is the world's leading project management certification, which includes predictive, agile, and hybrid approaches. Another word for predictive is waterfall approach. And usually most people use the waterfall approach, which is we do step 1 through step 2 through step 3 through whatever steps you have to get a project done. And then the assumption is at the end of a project, you've completed all the steps, so you should have the desired result. What we're starting to see now across all industries is that project management takes an agile or a hybridized approach where there are iterations of steps that are done, where you do check-ins, where you are collaborating with cross-functional teams in order to get a desired result. With the P.M.P, that certification proves that, one, you have the necessary project leadership experience and expertise in order to work smarter, work better, be more cohesive with the teams that you work with, and streamline business processes in order to achieve continuous improvement. I will go ahead to the next slide, but this is the official meaning, and I took that straight from and attributed that to PMI. The big question: how does this apply to the media collaborative? And for me, it is simple. Every media professional is a project manager, whether you realize it or not. A lot of people get caught up in the certification and the title of project manager. You can simply be a reporter. You could be a publicist. You can be an administrative assistant. You are managing projects. You are beginning and starting things that help your company, your team, your client or clients move the ball forward to get projects started all the way through the end and the reconciliation of that project. Having a P.M.P in your arsenal will definitely strengthen your profile and bolster your career path. I know it has for me. Like Terry stated, I started out as a secretary in corporate outplacement 20 years ago. And just being able to just pivot into writing, editing, working in PR, working with media, working with folks like Terry, and segueing into, you know, the consulting space and being able to get my P.M.P. I've seen my certification open doors for me that I probably would not have had if I hadn't had it. So with that, I will go to the next slide. What are the requirements for a P.M.P? It's actually not as tedious as you think. If you have a 4-year degree, whether undergraduate or graduate, you're already halfway there. You only need 3 years evidence of leading projects, not necessarily with the project manager title. That's very important because a lot of people get hung up on the titles, like I said previously. And you take a 35-hour project management education or training course. Or if you already have a what they call a CAP-M certification. A CAP-M certification is for someone who doesn't have enough project management experience, but is well on their way to getting that. So some people will opt to take the CAP-M, and then with the CAP-M, it automatically puts them in contention to go for the P.M.P. I know with most of the people that are on this call, folks that we've dealt with within the collaborative, most, if not all of you, are already eligible. You would just have to take a project management educational course to prep for the test, and then simply apply and get eligibility. In the event you don't have a 4-year degree, they will also accept a high school diploma or an associate's. They require 5 years experience of leading projects and that same project management course or the CAP-M. So again, I put the source on pmi.org. It has everything that you need to get additional information. So I'll go on to the next slide. The benefits of the P.M.P. Number one, and Terry mentioned it before he did the introductions. Number one, more money. Usually, an individual with a P.M.P. can make anywhere from 25 to 50% more money than they're making now. I can attest to that. It's more money. You get better benefits. You're offered more opportunities to be able to manage a litany of different projects, even if they're projects that aren't even in your arsenal or in your wheelhouse as far as the industry you work in. Having that certification puts you in the room. It gives you a seat at the table. And I've seen it happen for myself as well as various colleagues of mine. Number two, it boosts your profile. People see that certification and they know what it is. And even if you don't know what it is, when you find out what it is, then you'll know what it is. It puts you in a position as an authoritative figure to speak on things. And we don't want to get too caught up on, certs and titles, but it does give you the leg up if you're looking to pivot, which brings me to number three. It prepares you to elevate the career you already have, or in a lot of instances, for those who are in journalism or PR and they're looking to either have an add-on or just do a complete pivot, it allows you to transition. And that happened for me. The P.M.P. pretty much allowed me to transition and pivot at the same time. So I know for me personally, it's allowed me to kind of walk and, be involved in meetings. I wouldn't necessarily have invites to be invited to different social events. It invites me to just think not only of the industry that I'm working in, but other industries that I may be interested in moving into in the future. And also some of my own creative endeavors that I would like to, do. We all have our little hobbies that we like to do. We can apply those same skill sets that we learn once you study and pass the P.M.P. You can apply that to anything that you want to do in your professional and your personal life. And to just to wrap up, resources on if you're interested in learning more about the P.M.P. and possibly applying, PMI.org, which is the Project Management Institute. They issue the P.M.P. as well as other project management certifications. And of course, there's always other avenues to get additional certifications, not just this P.M.P. And hopefully in future media collaborative conversations, I'll have an opportunity, or I can bring folks over to kind of talk about those types of certifications, because I feel journalists, media folks, we need all the tools we can get. And with these types of resources, our tools will not only be sharpened, but it adds more to the toolkit. And then that's me at the end, my little emoji. So I want to thank everyone for giving me time. All of my information is here on all the socials. I'm at RiaRob, and I'm robertsria@gmail.com. And I thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Maria. Now you understand why we call it securing the bag. Securing the bag specifically refers to making money, bringing cheddar. In PR, we call it making it rain. And so Maria just enlightened us, but the average salary for a person who has P.M.P certification is always 6 figures. And it's usually mid-range between 140 and 200,000. So that's why I'm Maria's best friend. So Maria, you have a couple of questions in the chat, and I will have my questions at the end.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, I just wanted to ask Maria, what's considered evidence when it comes to getting those hours of leading projects? How would you be able to certify that in order to get that P.M.P?
Okay, thank you for asking. It kind of depends, and here's why I say that. When you apply, pretty much it will ask you your work history, and you detail that. For the most part, that should suffice. What PMI does tell you in advance is that random applications may be selected for further verification of projects. So let's just take, for instance, if you're a PR person, you can say, okay, I managed this campaign where we did these items here. We did this many press releases. We did write-ups. We did live interviews. You can provide links to those things. You can also provide name and contact number to your client. It's just like saying I have a reference. That's pretty much the main way you would be able to provide evidence for that. In a lot of instances, they don't ask for it, but in the event they do, that would be the best way to prepare.
All right, yeah. Tony, your question?
Yes, hi, Maria. My simply, is there a cost to obtaining the certification?
Yes. The cost of now with PMI, what I would advise people to do, I would get a membership with PMI. You don't have to have a membership in order to pay for the test, but you do get a discount if you are a member. So I believe for a membership, it is $100 a year to become a member. I had joined well before I decided I was going to go for the P.M.P. I felt it was money well spent because it allowed me to prep before I made this, so I could make a decision. The test, I believe, is $520. It's like $520 without a membership, and I think it's like $100 less with a membership. But when you go on to pmi.org, you will see a heading that says certifications. When you click on that link, it will give you all of the information you will need. The main information were the requirements that I posted in the slide, and then at the bottom it will give you the updated price because with inflation things go up. And the other thing that I've noticed with some of the PMI certifications, not the P.M.P, because I believe they just updated it a year ago. Sometimes the price will go up once they update if they end up having to update the exam in any way.
Thanks, Maria. Here's my question. How do I start preparing for the P.M.P? Now, it's my understanding that the average salary there starts around 120, and you could kick off at 127,000. How do I start preparing? Tell me about the checklist and the handbook and the study course.
Okay. Well, first, most people, when they start to look at studying for the P.M.P, and it's way different now that COVID has hit. Usually the P.M.P course would cost you anywhere from $1,200 to $2,500, depending on the PMI approved provider for that course. COVID, of course, as we all know, is the great equalizer. So a lot of those prices have slashed at least in half. One of the workarounds that I found that helped me after I failed the first time, because once you are eligible to take the exam, you have 3 times. You have 3 attempts to pass the test in a year. If you do not pass in those 3 attempts within that year, you have to wait another year to apply all over again for eligibility.
Oh.
But there is a book that is out that kind of puts the, that's good for the wallet and will give you everything that you need. If there is a name, if you learn nothing else from me today, know this name. This man's name is Andrew Romdial. I will put that in the chat. Can I put that in the chat? I can put that in the chat. Like, I am putting that in the chat. His name is Andrew Romdial, and he has over 60 plus certifications. I'm not sure if somebody needs to mute. Mic is hot. Thank you. Andrew Romdial has over 60 plus certifications, ranging from IT to project management to accounting, from all of the leading organizations, from Microsoft, PMI, et cetera, et cetera. I would follow him on LinkedIn. He's a great resource. He is the writer of a book called P.M.P Exam Prep Made Easy. The book, I believe, goes for $44. I think it came down it used to be $49. It went down by $5 to $44. The beautiful thing about this book is that the 35-hour course that would usually cost you $1,200 or $600 or $2,500 somewhere else is included in the book. So when you pay for the book, you're paying for the course. That's why so many people, and when you follow him on LinkedIn, you will see all these people talking about, oh, thank you, Andrew. You've helped me pass. Basically, this man will help you. I wish I had found him before, because I would have most likely passed the exam the first time. But I will say when I took it the first time, the following year it changed. So once it changed, I was fine.
Okay.
But it's a great book. He gives you everything that you need, and he doesn't just do the P.M.P, he does other certs as well. He's a great resource to follow. Yeah,
I've had a chance to interact with him so far, thanks to you, Maria. One last question: what is your superpower when it comes to P.M.P? Because I've seen, we talked a lot of technical information right now, but I have been, and you and I talked about this. We've been on some red carpets for movie premieres. We've been on some political junkets, and we wish that the person who put it on had some P.M.P background, because it was the worst in the world. One red carpet, they overbooked the theater, and there was not enough seats for people to see the premiere. And there was another red carpet with a politician, but there was no red carpet. So you and I were talking about, I wish these people had gotten their P.M.P certification, because it's very hard. And a lot of times we have these pop-up PR people popping in. So tell me, what is your superpower with the P.M.P?
For me, it bolstered my ability to communicate. I'm a professional communicator, and that's how I've always presented myself. It's not necessarily a specific title like journalist or a PR person. I am a professional communicator. So if the situation that I'm in is that of a PR person, I can communicate for that particular thing. If I am doing administrative work, I have basically the P.M.P bolsters my ability to communicate. It bolsters the skill sets of being attention to detail, being organized, being able to talk to folks in the C-suite all the way down to the janitor if I need to. Like you said, we've been in situations where somebody needed a P.M.P times 10 because they weren't able to break down what was really needed in order to pull certain things off for their client. It helps with, I mean, for people who plan events like Terry, you're someone who plans, who works with a lot of events. It helps bolster the event planning process because that people wouldn't encourage more event planners and promoters to get the P.M.P because they would be able to really look at their events, break them down, realize the different teams that all need to come together in order to make this thing move. It helps with better collaboration overall.
Thank you, Maria. If you have any more questions from Maria in the chat, I've also shared my column. I think my first P.M.P was my grandmother. We call her Big Mama. And
Right.
she taught me a lot of stuff about that. Let's go to Aprill now. Aprill, here we go. The accreditation in public relations. That's a credential. And it's one organization that controls that credential. And it says it's supposed to set you apart from your peers, position you as a leader and a mentor in a competitive public relations field. And so one of the terms that counted it asserts professional competence. Mm-hmm. Please share with us your thoughts and please share your journey with the A.P.R.
Sure.
I'm afraid. Go ahead.
So yes, as Terry mentioned, I am a member of PRSA, which a few different organizations, you can work through them to get an A.P.R, but PRSA is the biggest. And I received my A.P.R in 2019. When I think about it, wow, right before the pandemic, huh? It's in November 2019. And it's something that I had looked at for a while. I have been involved in progressive communication and worked on Capitol Hill, as Terry said, for years. I also teach PR. And these things can be a little daunting. We all are very busy. So I was like, I want to do it, but it's a little bit of a process. Like Maria did a great job going through her process. No one's just giving these things out. They're making you go through a few hoops. And I just, got busy with life. And then it was interesting. I started teaching a course on PR campaigns. And I noticed that the textbook was one of the study guides that were suggested for the A.P.R. And I said to myself, well, if I study this to teach it, I should be able to take this test. So that was for me like, okay, now that you're using that as your textbook, this information really, really well. I will say I find that the A.P.R is really helpful professionally. It's not something, I want to say that none of these certifications are things that you need. Obviously, we are all in the communication industry and are all excelling in it, but I think it's interesting to have the perspective. It can give you an extra oomph. It's definitely the A.P.R process is definitely what is being taught to PR students. It's helpful if you're a teacher. And I also would say it's a great professional network. I think we all take our craft very, very seriously, and to be able to be such a student of it and be able to get into the nuts and bolts of it and really invest in yourself are the things that I have found most rewarding about it. Yes, there's always money. I think PRSA has put a number in here that over your career, you could see this amount from having the A.P.R. But I also just think it's very, very professionally rewarding and beneficial. And here are just some of the criteria for an A.P.R. They're asking for people to at least have 5+ years experience. You're usually finding this person in the organization that is either mid-level or senior level management. And of course, they're a leader and probably a top communication council within their organization are probably all signs that you might be someone that might be in the tier to try to go for your A.P.R. And I will say, we all know that our industry is that of an art and a science. And I think the A.P.R. really focuses on the science part of what it is that we do. It's creating systems to run effective communication campaigns. I can say honestly, and I think we all kind of, however we got to this work, whether organically or went to school for it, we all kind of have our process for how we do communications. I think the A.P.R. process is very effective, and I can say I use it every day. So I know we are looking for like, what are the rewards, even sometimes dollar signs, but it's something that I use every day, and I find it a beneficial process, and then just a neat way to retool your thinking if you go through the A.P.R. process. Some of the values are, professional development, job support, networking, access to research. I will say PRSA does a great job of linking together A.P.R. So we have a listserv, we chat a lot. If you've ever applied for a national communication award, it's usually A.P.R. that are judging them, and they're judging you based off of the criteria that it takes to become an A.P.R., to run what they consider to be an effective communication campaign. And it's interesting to have gone through this process and kind of having a mind shift of how the industry says, because PRSA is the governing body for PR industry, how a campaign should be run. That people spend lots of money to apply for national awards, and if it doesn't follow this process, they're usually going to throw it away before they even read it too hard. It needs to go through a certain process. I'm going to go back to this in a second, but that process is RPI. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, that communication program should involve research, planning, implementation, and evaluation. And that really is what the A.P.R. is understanding each of these 4 processes and being able to speak to them and how we run effective communication campaigns. Just a little bit about the A.P.R. process. It can take a total of a year to get your A.P.R. It starts with filling out an application. It's about 10 to 12 pages. I believe the application fee, I believe it's $200, maybe $225. I have to look. And you're pretty much giving in your resume, answering some questions. Why do you want to go through this process? And what do you think you'll benefit from it? It goes to PRSA, and after your application is accepted, that's when your clock starts. We actually have a year from the application being accepted to finish your entire process. And part of that process is a questionnaire you have to do. You do have to have a portfolio and do a presentation in front of a committee of your peers, and you do need to take a 3-hour and 45-minute test, and that test costs $395, I believe, was the last price that I remember. And most people do it in that order, but you have a year from the application being accepted to do all of those things. And after all of those things are given into the A.P.R. committee, they will obviously review your test scores. The committee will go over your presentation and make sure it hits certain standards. They've already looked at and received your resume, your application, and those are the check boxes that you need to get your A.P.R. And I will say, after you get your A.P.R., I believe it's every 3 years, you have to renew it. They're looking for people that are active in the field. And I will say renewing is as simple as doing presentations, writing articles, teaching a course. I was excited. I think you have to get 15 points, for every 3 years. I was excited. I won a National Media Award from NWJ that took care of all 15 of my points. So if you're doing things in the industry, you will automatically be able to renew yourself very easily. If you take trainings, you can jot down the thing that you're doing in public relations, and you will, most of us will very easily, this is probably would count toward one as well. Most of us would very easily make our points to be able to renew our A.P.Rs. No money is involved there, but it is, you need to show your continuing commitment to the field is what's happening when you renew your A.P.R. The tests that I hadn't taken a test in a long time, so almost a 4-hour test is a little daunting. And they are measuring your KSAs, your knowledge, skills, and abilities. And this is kind of a breakdown of the test. And A.P.R is very good about giving you study tools, books, things that you would need to pass the test, but that test is a third of that RPI method, that research, planning, implementation, evaluation, and then it gets into the PR function, PR as a management function, how you work in your organization, how you work across organization, how you report to your boss, you know, the PR person being the chief communication counsel, lots of questions on that. Obviously, PR is all about managing relationships. A lot of questions about that. And then there'll be smaller sections on ethics, law, crisis management, and then models and theories. There are some great resources to study for the A.P.R. There's a particular gentleman, and I'll give you these links later, named Michael Henry, who has an A.P.R prep course. It's $195. They usually meet 3 times a year for like a 10-week period. I believe it's fall, spring, and summer. And it's a really great course. He walks you through all of these KSAs and what you need to study and what you need to pass this course. And the best part about Michael Henry's course is when you pay your $195 one time, you can audit the class over and over again. And I would sometimes be in my kitchen cooking or be in my car and just listen to it. It is very helpful to just the repetitive nature of being able to hear certain things over and over again and really get how most tests are and how they ask the questions. And he's very good at helping you deduce answers. Most of the test, multiple choice, he's very good at helping you figure out what they're really looking for and how to get to the answer that they want to see. And again, back to that RPI. And, you know, when you do your questionnaire, you're kind of showing your ability. Some of these things, they're going to ask you for a campaign, a communication campaign that you've run. And it doesn't have to be one that was successful. It can be one that you tried and you learned from. But they're going to ask you to walk through and show us how you implemented these KSAs and implemented the RPI method in your work. And that in itself is really an interesting process. And for when you get to the part that you're giving your actual presentation, it's usually a committee of 3 of your peers. These are kind of the things they want to see in your communication plan, what you're going through, how you work through a communication problem, like what was your PR goal? Tell me who your target audience and publics were, you know, for each audience, what their objective, what strategy and tactics did you use and activities? How did you measure the success of your campaign? They want to see some of the materials that you use. They also want to see that you can do a budget, and they want to see your timetable. So again, all things that we know, I think it's just neat to have a reminder of these things. I am sure that, you know, people find this process very daunting because you're giving people kind of the answers as they want them, but we all know how to do these things. It's just a matter of going through the A.P.R process and figuring out how to pass that test and present it in a certain way. And I'm sorry I hadn't been looking. I'm sure there's some questions, but want to make sure that I'm answering them if anybody has any.
Thank you so much, April. And boy, was that thorough. I've already changed my mind. I'm going to be able. I'm going to give you the questions that came. Everybody sent a bunch of questions before the session. So here it is. Most seasoned African Americans see the A.P.R process being biased. And one of the biggest arguments is that what extra comes from it? I am already making all the money I can make in this industry. Why do I need it? I just saw you explain a whole lot of reasons why it should be needed. So can you answer that question to that person?
I think we're all, you know I am always looking to grow professionally and keep growing. Terry mentioned the PRSA conference. I'm gonna see you in a few weeks, Terry, down in Dallas.
All right.
Already called me to like lead some A.P.R workshops, to talk to other A.P.Rs. Like it is a neat little network. I love working with other judges. Like it's neat to be amongst your peers. I thought I was going to finish the exam. I got my A.P.R, I'm done. And I'm like, this networking of this small group of people continues. I'm a big proponent of there being more of us. that have this certification. I think certifications are important. Do you need them to prove you have a skill or maybe to get from A to B? I don't think so, but I think they're professionally and personally helpful to maintain these ties in our networking circles and just continue to grow professionally. Like I said, I use this process every day when I sit down and think about, wow, my boss asked me to write up a campaign plan for this campaign. I start with this process, and I thought it was very helpful to always retool ourselves on how we do things.
This is the great thing I like about this, and you really blew that out the water because you are a seasoned professional, and you've been a seasoned professional way before 2000, and here you are getting your APR in 2019, and that the way you broke it down, I don't see how anyone shouldn't do it. Here's another question I got at 7 in the morning. As an active member of NBPRS, should we own our own APR certification, and would it have the same credibility as if we got it from PRSA?
I love that. I think it's a great idea. And there, if we were serious in exploring that, there's 2 ways to do it. So APR is a separate entity. It goes through, I think, PRSA, it goes through I think it's an international group of communication business professional. It goes through several different organizations. So to think about that could be one way if we wanted to focus on getting more African Americans into the APR system. I think BIPOC would be a great funnel organization for that. Or is it something that we just wanted to go off on our own and make our own certification? I think that's cool too. PRSA is not the issuing organization that issues APRs, but they are a funnel organization for the APR certification, if that makes sense. So BIPOC could be totally the same thing if we so chose that really focus on African-American professionals. So I think both would be great.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate it. Anybody else have a question for April? Let's see if we covered everything. There's one from Mita. Go ahead, Mita.
Yes, and definitely great presentation, April. And I just was asking because, I get it, but just like with Maria's presentation, test taking, and I'm not feeling it. I can't even see straight after about 30 minutes, let alone sitting for 3 hours. But I know in other professions, I know like when Donna Karen, she did all of her success and everything, she never really had her college degree, and it was kind of insulting for her to have to go back to FIT and get a degree when people were using her as a test case. So is there that kind of consideration for, like honorary certifications or something like that for seasoned professionals who've kind of shown the track record that other people are following?
That's a good question, Mia. And I'm just looking up something because I'm not there yet myself, but PRSA has a higher level of distinction. It's called the College of Fellows. And it's for seasoned communication professionals that have 20+ years experience. But the catch-all is because PRSA is such their push to professionalize communication in recent decades has been number one thing. They do require A.P.R to get to that College of Fellows. I don't think it's something that's necessary, but for these organizations, there is no you get in on the honorary level, to go anywhere up, they want this APR at the pretty baseline thing. And I think that really is about, we all know PR people can't get disbarred. We can't, there really is no, in their effort to professionalize public relations, they're trying to make some rungs, make it kind of hard to get there. And as Terry said before, not just give it to everybody. Right. That's really the reason why they do that. But yeah, again, I don't think it's necessary. I also wanted to add, it's best to link up with the local PRSA chapter to help with this process. Usually chapters are the ones that give you that portfolio review and will walk you through the process. But if you're impatient like me, PRSA does things that are called A.P.R bootcamp. And you can go for 3 days and they will do this 1-year process for you in 3 days. You can go for a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They will prep you. They will give you the test. You can have the portfolio review. And you can leave with your APR. Now, I will say that the misnomer about that is you can just do it in 3 days. You should be well studied before you start that 72 hours. Don't just walk into it if you're going to teach you 72 hours. You should be ready to take your A.P.R by the time you start that weekend, but it's still a little bit of a time saver as opposed to a chapter is going to take months to get through each part of that of that process.
Right. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, April. I do think that we really do need to renew the argument just based on the wisdom that you and the skill set you bring to the table and Mita brings to the table. We need to look at some type of process where grandfathering is what we used to call it in the old business. We grandfather ourselves in over some of the hurdles because I do believe that there are some, I've seen some of the A.P.R questions, and I'm sometimes worried that my peers won't be able to interpret a step show as opposed to a pageant. And so, so I think there's some cultural barriers we need to work with.
I agree.
Yeah, and so that's one thing that I thought in your presentation has really opened the doors for me to have better arguments. So I'll see you in Dallas, and we may be able to create a grandfather effect. We may call it the Merit Day principle.
There you go.
So let's see if we can work on that. Thank you so much, April. And thank you. This is going to be very valuable to all those who are going to see it when we put it online. My next guest is Earl Arms, and you've heard about him. And so Earl, here's my question for you. We know that you have done a fantastic job as a journal. And you've been all over the board. A career pivoting is a popularized phase that suggests going from one career path to another successfully. And that means there's a successful transition. You are now in the PR realm. And of course, April's here, she's my witness, but we used to be called the dark side, and most people feel like we are the lucrative side. We've never been dark. So talk to us and share with us what career pivoting that you did, and what was the intentional and purposeful part of your pivot?
Well, first off, thank you, Terry, for having me on. It's great to be here with a bunch of other Black professionals here in the public relations space and the journalism space. But to get to your question, my pivoting started even after or even before I left television in general. It started even when I was still anchoring sports, and I wanted to go into news, and I wanted to do that full time and to get the full scope of what it's like to work in a newsroom. So I went from anchoring sports in my hometown to anchoring news and going to the deep South to do it, right? Why not get that cultural experience of, going down South as opposed to being in the Midwest, right? So, just thinking about different experiences just with every opportunity I take, not just doing something that's the same, but getting another realm of experience along with any other opportunity I take. So, and it's funny because without that news experience, without having the ability to, go to meetings with the, story ideas, with seeing how school board meetings are covered, with seeing how politics and how government is covered, I probably wouldn't have been in any shape to take the next position I took. And that was a position with the governor's office, working specifically for the lieutenant governor here in Wisconsin, and an historic administration at that. I don't know if you've heard a lot of the disparities is around Black people and white people in Wisconsin, specifically Milwaukee, where I'm from. But those things are dire. So to have a lieutenant governor that's Black at the state capitol was significant, and to be able to work for him made it that much more worth it. So being able to pivot from news to government gave me the experience of working in government, working for an historic administration, but being able to use my news experience to be successful in getting coverage, being able to also kind of learn on the job, right? Talking about putting together projects, leading projects. How are we going to roll out this news that we're focusing on clean energy and doing it for an office that really is under the guise of the governor. The governor leads, lieutenant governor kind of follows, and of course you're in the room and making decisions and whatnot. But just understanding those dynamics and being able to go through that and to take that and go into education. Talk about securing the bag, right? So having to go and along with getting pay raises when it comes to these positions, also getting different experiences. So from government to education, and then getting the experience to lead a large school district, the largest school district in the state, based on that experience working in government, being able to understand how to lead projects, how to, go and find stories. Because I mean, honestly, that's really what it's been all about. Even from my time as a journalist all the way through PR, it's about finding those good stories, finding people that resonate with those in the community to help make an impact. Depending on the goal of whatever entity you're working, whatever you're working with. So being able to do all of those things helped me to get to now where I'm at, which is working in PR for a Fortune 100 company. People like to talk about Fortune 500. Northwestern Mutual's Fortune 100 right here in Milwaukee. I mean, that's serious stuff, right? You and having that corporate experience and being able to say I worked with a large entity that has all the tools in place to, make whatever happened, whatever needs to happen, and has done it for more than 150 years. Just talking about pivoting, going from different positions to different positions, but through each transition, getting another experience. Now, I haven't done it yet. I haven't fully gone into the consulting realm or done things on my own, but I'm very much on my way. I get people asking me to lead their PR projects all the time, and do I have the time to do it? Not necessarily, but I know I can create time, and when I do create time and I'm able to focus on that, I'll have the experiences from each of my positions to say that I know how to pivot. I know how to go from one position to the other and make sure that it's beneficial to my career.
So I got a question for you, Earl.
Yes, sir.
All of us are journalists. I tell people all the time, once a journalist, always a journalist. You don't really lose that skin. You just put on another suit. You have used storytelling and relationship building advocacy. I know that I got that famous relationship building email from you just a couple of weeks ago, right? And so
Yes, sir.
how's that working? What share your tips on how you use that relationship building in your storytelling to make it work for you to pursue change and career progression?
I mean, those of us in newsrooms understand, or that are in newsrooms understand that a lot of times when it comes to getting a story, when it comes to calling a source or calling someone about a story, it's someone it's someone that you build a relationship with, or someone that you've interacted with in some other way. And if you're looking to dig and find someone, or if you're not, more likely than not, the person you're going to reach out to is the first person that's on your mind, someone you already have a relationship with, and that level of trust to where you know that if you ask them for something, they're able to deliver. So being a part of rooms like this, being a part of different organizations, and even though you're not a journalist, remaining active with journalists. So being a part of NAPJ, being a part of different circles or organizations that are going to allow you to be in these spaces, because a lot of times folks focus on data and how to play the numbers game, which is fine and can work out. But if you play the relationships game, it'll make those numbers and it'll skew that data that much more into your favor, because you already have that established trust between someone that is a storyteller and you, someone that's trying to get a story told.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. That's amazing, Earl. You've shed a light in your background, just being in sports and sports broadcast, all the things you're doing, and now you're with Northwestern Mutual and you're spreading that imprint. So I appreciate you for sharing. Our listeners and the viewers are going to see this, and you'll probably get a lot of questions. Now let's go to Arlynda. I kind of put her at the bottom because I know we're going to get some major advice on this, and this is why I gave her the title, Show Me the Money. Show Me the Money, Woman. Arlynda, biggest question I have here about this is that when people try to transition to public affairs, I'm reminded of one of the articles that I wrote in my column, my Big Mama column, that says, if the gravy on your plate don't fall on my plate, then your gravy is no good. And I think the maze that is over in the government side for me to take my skill set and go get a public affairs job or a government job, it's daunting. How do we navigate that?
Thanks for asking that question. That is somewhat of a mystery to a lot of people. The federal government process for applying for positions have changed as of recently. It's been pretty much consistent for a number of years, and there's been a lot of interest groups that have expressed concerns, a lot of governmental leaders that have expressed concerns over the years about the government application process. And we've had executive orders put out to change pieces of it. We had a recent executive order that came out that I'll share a little bit about. But I do want to make a disclaimer. So the federal government is pretty much a stagnant entity, meaning that once you enter into the federal government, it's not a lot of flexibility of moving around to kind of grasp other skills or experiences. You're pretty much in a structured position, organization, unless you apply for another position, which you would have to have qualifications for. But saying all that, I'm going to give you guys an abbreviated version, basically, of the application process as I know it to be right now. Hopefully things will change a little bit more. So the main things I wanted to highlight just this afternoon is to be able to give you some 3 special areas of when you're looking at applying for a federal job to pay attention to, because it's going to make a big difference in the pain that you're trying to, go through and actually applying for a federal job. So the first part that I want to underscore is there is an executive order that came out this year where they're making an attempt to modernize and reform the application process. So historically, they for positions that required an education, for that particular occupation, there was the education requirement or the specialized experience. And then, of course, each position that you apply for with different agencies will have self-assessments. And that's pretty much questions or scenario-based assessments that would kind of get after what you really know. So now, under this new modernization and reform movement, it's competency and skills-based hiring for some positions. And those positions are normally ones that require an educational requirement. Now, for many of you in your backgrounds, when you're talking about, public affairs, we call them strategic communications officers, those positions would not typically have an educational requirement. So you guys would basically be walking in sort of overqualified for a lot of the vacancies, as well as that they don't require necessarily any type of certification. So I just want to kind of put that out there. Of course, if you have it and come in, there may be instances where they will pay you a retention pay, but not very often will they actually would offer retention for those who are highly qualified or have a certification coming in. So that's the unfortunate part about the federal government. When you're looking at a vacancy announcement for a federal position, you have to make sure you're looking at who can apply, because there's different sectors or different people that they say can apply to their positions. So when you go out and look, USA Jobs is where all federal announcements, job advertisements are located. You have to check who may apply to see if you can even be, considered for the position. So there are basically 2 categories when you're looking at who can apply for federal jobs: either federal employees that's already in the system or that used to be in the system and trying to get back in, and your veterans. And then there's public, which is open to all U.S. citizens. So it will actually tell you who can apply for the positions that are out there. I'm seeing that they're trying to get better with this, because most positions are open to current federal employees that work at different agencies. And that's unfortunate, because they're trying to get more different skill sets in from private sector, small companies, contractors, etc. So I expect at some point that this is going to be expanded. But right now, these are the 2 main categories that are out there for the federal positions. The next is considered very crucial when you're looking at a vacancy announcement. What are the conditions of employment? You want to know what the requirements are coming in and what it will be once you are in. So that can include security clearances, drug testing, any type of certifications or licenses if applicable, and then physical exams. So if there are conditions of employment, vacancy announcements are going to contain this information. It will let you know what those parameters are. You do not have to pay for any of these things. The federal government will normally pay for your security clearance when you come in, or they will normally pay for your drug testing before you come in and get a job offer. And while you're working to be able to maintain that, they will pay for that as well. If there are certifications or licenses that are applicable to that particular agency and that's required, they'll normally pay for you to maintain those certifications or licenses in some instances. And then a physical, they will normally require you to have up front, and they will also fund that as well. So these are not things you would have to pay for out of your pocket. The next important section is the specialized experience. So when you're looking at a vacancy announcement for a federal job, you must know what's required. And each vacancy announcement will have a specialized experience category, which will tell you exactly what's being looked for. And it spells it out, and it will tell you how long. So 52 weeks of job-related experience is what's going to be the regulatory requirement for specialized experience. And that's 1 year. You have to be able to demonstrate that 1 year in your resume. And I underscore that it needs to be a narrative resume. So many of you may be familiar with having a resume where you're submitting it for a private sector job, company, sort of, you know, Fortune 500 companies, etc. The format's a bit different with the federal government because it's expected that you will have a narrative resume that breaks down in more detail as to what you're actually doing or what you've actually done, so that they can determine if you have the specialized experience. So some people kind of get a little bit confused on that because they'll provide a resume that's bulletized and this has, you know, this one little liner for certain things, and immediately you will get rejected pretty much if you submit a resume like that through the federal system. So that's the end of those three categories. I just want to say that the federal government is very structured. Pay system is very structured. For those of you who are wanting that scope and that wide range of opportunities where you can move up and down throughout the organization and you can acquire different experiences, and or you don't have to worry about a structured pay system, the federal government may not be exactly, you know, optional for you in the immediate. I can only say that being 32 years in the federal government, and I have 2 years of private sector experience, the private sector experience that I actually had was a little bit more valuable in that I was able to move around a little bit more. My pay was not regulatorily based. Normally, you have to wait 1 year at one grade level before you're eligible to move to another grade, a higher grade level for promotion. In private sector, those things are not in play, you know, in play like that. So this is just a personal decision for you that you would need to make if this is something that you would want to, you know, invest your time in with the federal government. It's not bad. It's just that it takes a while to kind of end up moving, you know, to moving around in the federal government. It does take some years.
That's been amazing, Arlynda. And I was just sorry, I was busy redoing my resume based on what you just said. So, let me take that out. Let me take that out. So I appreciate it. Mita, go ahead and ask your questions for Arlynda.
I hear you. I was kind of, I said, wait a minute. Well, I'm good on that part because I have about 18 narrative resumes. But Arlynda, I wanted to know, and I had put in the chat, I mean, many of us, you know, like the discussion are really kind of the sole practitioners or along the consulting lines. And I know being on the White House Office of Public Engagement, the Faith-Based and Community Committee, we hear a lot about the work that, you know, they're doing with consultants and reaching out to media entities, but I'm not seeing that relationship or that funding going to those organizations or entities that are headed by us. They want us to get the information out into our communities about the many things that are coming out of the Biden administration, but they're not funding that. So, you know, how do we go about that? And I'm glad that you submitted your email address, because I definitely want to get back to you. I mean, we just came off of this whole presentation with regard to the suicide prevention, you know, and out of 1,400 submissions, they picked 40 that were like more of the same. And none of the ones that were selected reflected the specific needs in our community. So how can we generate that type of, resource development, so that we can, pay ourselves and hire other creatives, to actually do the work that they want foot soldiers in the community, but we need the resources to do that.
And that seems to be always the question that comes up. It's amazing about resources, great, great initiatives, great ideas, and great things that are needed. But you find that that's always the sluggish part about these kind of programs is the funding and the resources and who's going to manage it and who's the POC. And that's always seems to be a challenge that I've experienced and I've heard about in the system. The best thing probably to be able to do is if there's someone that's in a related agency that actually is more of a stakeholder, is actually reaching out to them and actually engaging them to see, where that would fit in with, with what they do. But finding the appropriate stakeholder would be my only recommendation, and making that connection with them and engage that way.
Okay.
But it is challenging. It very much is challenging when you're talking about resources, because it's, for some reason, it always seems to lag behind and never seem to materialize up front.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Arlynda, I got some questions for you because you just mentioned them. So you put that elephant in the room, so I'm gonna come back to you.
Okay.
All right. Most public affairs jobs, you said, are 6 figures. I've seen the public affairs job in the federal government. They're mostly around 6 figures and mid-range. And to know that there are no educational requirements is great. To see that 52 weeks is 1 year, that's great. But here are my questions, because I am dealing with the federal government, and you've just spoken on the rigidity of the federal government. Are there any deal breakers in background checks and security clearances? I'm thinking that if President Obama can admit he smoked marijuana and still be president, so what are the deal breakers? I'm asking for a friend.
And usually it depends upon the level of security clearance. If it's one of those, you've got a high level security clearance where you may work dealing with what they call top compartmental investigations, where you're handling a lot of sensitive or a lot of critical information, and of course your security requirement is going to be a little bit stiffer. But most positions don't require a top secret clearance, so that gives a little bit more flexibility as to what they allow. And some things, and security makes these determinations. So some things where you would think that would not be, that would be a deal breaker, as long as you're able to provide some justification for some of those things, then they can kind of actually work through those. Now they do look at serious felonies that were, the murders and, certain, rape cases and things like that, but I think for the most part, if they are, under those type of things, that they work through those issues. And of course, drug testing, we have to have a negative drug test for that. But other than that, I don't know if there's particular carte blanche situations where they just say absolutely no. I think they look at every case based on its own merit and how the regulation is structured.
This is a question that I've asked a number of people in the federal government, have never seemed to have gotten the question. I know that President Obama tried to address this. It seems as though there are times where people, and it's happened to me on a number of occasions, will apply for a federal position and then you hear nothing. You never hear anything about your status. The status is never updated in USA Jobs. It just says still under consideration, even though you know that the position has already been filled. You apply and you go 90 days, 120 days, 6 months, don't hear anything. I'm wondering if that is being looked at, because that is a very frustrating process for someone who is looking for work. And I know for me, and know a lot of people who have applied for federal positions in the past, that doesn't work, because that's something that's really wouldn't be tolerated in the private sector, because we have a mandate in the private sector. Hey, we need to get somebody in here. We need to wrap up the process in 2.5 months. And we need to always let people know what's going on every step of the process. If you didn't make the first cut, you get an email, then you can go on and look for something else. But it seems as though the doesn't work that way in the federal system. It's a little frustrating. So I'm trying to see if that is being considered in terms of kind of improving the communication process.
It's interesting that you say that because I've been a recipient of that as well, and it is so frustrating. As a matter of fact, I wrote an article a couple of years ago on LinkedIn, as a, hey, my fellow HR people, please take the time to get back with people who apply for positions, because if you're in the position, you want that to be, you want that as well. But I can tell you that in all the years that I've been with the federal government, that has always been a problem, always been an issue. And is there one thing that it points to? I'm going to be honest with you. It's just negligence. It's negligence, because it is so easy and simple to click that button now to say the position's been filled. As an HR specialist, I did it many a time, so I know what they have to do. But for whatever reason, and it's different agencies all over the place. And there is nothing that I'm aware of right now. Of course, OPM is the governing agency for federal jobs, the Office of Personnel Management. So they manage that platform. I don't know if they've got something overall to address that. They've kind of been leaving it up to the individual agencies to take accountability for that and notifying their applicants. But I can tell you that based on different applications that I put, different jobs I put in for, it's always a delay there. I see Jade with her hand up.
Jade, go ahead.
Hey, Arlynda. Hi, everyone.
Jade.
I just want to clarify things. So Meta asked about contracting. So those are two in the federal government. Those are two different offices. So I put the link to sam.gov where the federal government puts their contracting information and where you can find more what contracts are available that you may be interested in. And Arlynda's experience is mostly in human resources. So in the federal government, that's onboarding, resumes, like getting into the government and managing employee relations. So I wanted to be clear about what's what, because I wouldn't want you to email a question that might be better fit for somebody else in like the government, because it's like very, like she said, it's very stagnant and very stovepipe at times.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. That's amazing. You guys have done a fantastic job of making us go exactly. After we get started, we went exactly 59 minutes. So I appreciate that. This has been a great sharing of information. P.M.P is an important task to add to your name. And also, we just showed that skills do enhance our growth. A.P.R, which has been a barrier to a lot of people of color because of the process, shows that it is an additional gift. And pivoting, Earl has shown what pivot means and what it looks like. You're a good example of pivot, Earl. And also, Arlynda has shown us where the money is. In other words, Arlynda, I think what my grandmother would say, I have a big mama column, she said, she was a D&I expert long before D&I was a word. She said, you put your foot in it, okay? So you put your foot in it. Now, I knew you were, look at that halo around you. Yeah, behind your head there. I knew something special.
That's the reflection of my glasses, I think.
So in other words, I think all of you put your foot in it. I want to thank Aprill for letting us know that A.P.R is not the monster we thought it was. And the cultural barriers is maybe more a misnomer or disinformation. It's also the fact that we can own that ourselves. Maria has taken her marketing and writing skills, and she's gone from secretary to CEO. So it's good to know that being P.M.P is good. So I think we've got a long way to go here. But one thing we have learned here, that in all things, we work for the good of each other. Proximity works. The more we put ourselves in the proximity of each other, the more we can help. The more we can have that 4 a.m. email or phone call to somebody on this call who's going to enhance this. This is going to be shown to all of the ties that we have. That means that it's going to go to NABJ Media related members. It's going to go to BIPOCs and all the chapter presidents, and their team is going to go to our members of PRSA. It's going to go to our other communicators in some of the chapters. So you guys have laid out some pearls of wisdom, and it kind of, you've broken down some image barriers and rumor barriers. So it's great to be in the community of other communities so that we can see how powerful we are. We're more powerful than we think. And I think in this post-George Floyd moment, we have got a moment that we have to create enough momentum to make this a movement. You know, we've seen all these created DEI jobs, and most of these people don't have any skin in the game. I'm proud to know that this is a lesson in diversity, equity, inclusion, because every one of you have skin in the game. You're not playing the role, you're actually delivering it. I appreciate you guys for being here, and all of my guests. Well, you know, this is a happy hour. My drinks are right here, and mine is right here. I'm all for it. So y'all hide your drinks. You shouldn't do that. But thank you for, there you go, April. I see yours. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a part of this process. I will load this up. It'll be edited. Before we release it to everybody else, you can give me your green light. I have looking for an editor. My student edited so well, he's been hired by the local ABC affiliates. I have to hire somebody else. So thank you so much for being here. This has been so amazing. You guys are so amazing. I'm so glad that we did the proximity connection. I call April because April gave me viability when she was the media-related board rep, and she and I both knew Pat Tobin. It's great to know that she's a Pat Tobin media professional of ours. Mita is the founder, one of the founders of BIPOC. I call it the National Black Public Relations Society, and she is a word beast and a warrior. And so it's good to be around all these people and make sure this happens. And I called Jade, and Jade led me to Miss Almond, Dr. Almond, I'm sorry. And so we are here by our connections, our proximity. So go out there and do all the good work that God has promised you that you would do. And you guys are an example of Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I have for you, to prosper you and not to harm you. Be blessed, safe travels. I'm going to interact with all of you, and I will be sending you some gifts that I have here, because that's what I do. And if you don't believe me, ask April. Everywhere I go, I'm bringing gifts. That's what I do. So you'll be getting stuff in the mail. We're going to close this out. I'm going to go to a group picture. There we go. I'm going to hold my drink up. So, you know, let people know this is a happy hour. So I'm going to take a group shot. So if you guys could wave real quick. We'll just wave it to, there you go. Y'all call me later. I'll tell you what I'm drinking. I ain't telling y'all nothing.